Hey everybody, this is Tracy here for another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to recap Greenleaf Season 2, Episode 3. And this episode was titled A Mother's Love. So the show opens with Grace rushing to the hospital. It turns out that Danielle, who was one of the girls that was molested by Uncle Mac, she attempted suicide by taking some pills, and so they had to pump her stomach and all of that stuff. And when I hear people say that they give you charcoal when you OD, I just thought that was a term. I didn't realize that it was actual charcoal, because Danielle had like the black stuff all around her mouth, and she was saying, how disgusting it was. And so she says that she feels really dumb, but the kids were bullying her at school and on social media after learning about the accusations about Uncle Mac, and that some kids broke into her locker and they took out some clothes. I'm not sure if it was her gym locker, but she said that there was a change of clothes and they took her underwear and wrote slut across the back of the underwear. So Danielle wants to know why Uncle Mac is not in jail. And, of course, Grace wants to know also, but of course she can't go into all the details and the logistics of what happened. So Lady Mae is mourning the absence of Jacob and his family. So they took everything out of that suite that they were staying in, like every piece of furniture. Looked like the curtains were gone, everything was gone. And so she's in there, looking at the little marks that you make on the wall, as the children are growing up, and just really missing having Jacob around. And so the bishop comes in and he suggests that maybe she should paint the suite a new color. Uncle Mac had to move, out of his condo, and he's now living in an apartment that looks like it is way beneath the lifestyle that he's accustomed to. So he's looking out the window when a mom and her two kids walk by, and they're looking at a flyer, and so he's looking down and he smiles at them, and then the mom looks up and realizes that he is the person that's on the flyer, and so she hurries the kids along, and it turns out that the flyer is actually a copy of his mugshot and lists all the charges against him with the molestation and the rape and everything. So Jacob goes to see Basie Skanks, who is going over some graphics for a billboard. And Jacob is there to let him know that there's an issue with the construction and the drainage and sewage, and that it's going to cost an extra, I think he said $400,000 to fix. So Skanks suggests that Jacob go to visit an older woman who won the Powerball, and I guess she was a member of Calvary, but she's left Calvary and doesn't go to church or anything, and that he should talk to her and ask her for the money, and that it doesn't matter whether she gives him, well, it does matter, but he says that the important thing is that sometimes people just want you to ask, even if they're going to say no in the end. So Jacob arrives at the home of Miss Claire, I think that was her last name, to try and get the donation. But after she starts talking about the money being a curse and just all the people that are coming out of the woodwork, looking for money, he changes his mind about asking for the money. So she asks him how he's doing at Triumph and states that she hasn't seen a Greenleaf in a really long time. And she also goes on to let him know that, he shouldn't feel bad about, working at the other church. And she says that, it's room for two churches. And then she asks him why did he really come by to see her, after all this time. And then Jacob lets her know that he just wanted to see her, because he missed her, and that made her feel really good. So Sophia and Zora are having lunch, but Zora is receiving text after text after text. Sophia asks, who is she texting? And she says that it is Isaiah. So Zora is either very insensitive or she's totally oblivious to the violation she's committed and to the fact that she's hurt Sophia. So Grace goes to pick Sophia up from Jacob's house, and she asks Carissa, can she make some connections to get Danielle into another school? So Carissa doesn't really seem happy, to see Grace, or the fact that she's living in this much smaller house. And when Grace says that the house isn't that bad, Carissa tells her that she can save her pity because had Grace not come back, they wouldn't be in that house. They'd still be over at the Greenleaf estate. The following day, Zora and Sophia arrive at an event at Triumph that Zora, had to attend. And Isaiah is performing, and Zora doesn't try to hide her infatuation with him. And so we have a scene, where Sophia is kind of lingering in the background, and she's really hurt and disappointed. And after, Isaiah finishes performing, he comes over to Zora and they're like hugging. I think he even kissed her on the cheek or something. But then he wants to leave and go somewhere else. So Zora comes over and asks Sophia if she wants to go, but Sophia says no. And so the two of them end up sneaking out, and Sophia stays to cover for them. So while listening to a speaker, a young guy that was sitting behind Sophia introduces himself, and the two engage in a conversation about forgiveness and some other topics that the speaker had brought up. And so Tasha Skanks comes up looking for Zora, and Sophia says that she's in the bathroom. And Tasha says, well, she's been in the bathroom for about 2 hours, to which Sophia replies that she's having female issues. So when Carissa comes to pick the girls up, she is met by Tasha, who asks again if she can help her decorate the house, but again, Carissa brushes her off and is being really rude. And I'm thinking that the reason Carissa is treating the woman the way she is because remember when they were at the groundbreaking ceremony, Tasha made some little comment about Jacob being fine. And so, add that to the fact that Carissa is mad about having to move away from the Greenleafs into that little tiny house, and Tasha just doesn't stand a chance. So the two, they throw a little shade back and forth at each other, and then Tasha decides to let Carissa know that Zora was acting like Elvis, and that she had left the building for several hours, and that Sophia covered for her. So, she was sort of like letting Carissa know that, your stuff stank like everybody else stuff, so don't come in here acting like you're better than we are, and that, Tasha's just trying to be her friend, but for whatever reason, Carissa doesn't want to let her in. So Carissa goes in to see Grace when she drops Sophia off, and she lets her know that Sophia covered for Zora, so she could sneak off. And she also lets Grace know that she found a spot for Danielle at another school. So at Jacob and Carissa's, little house, Jacob is lecturing Zora, and he lets her know that she is forbidden from ever seeing Isaiah again, because basically you don't want a boyfriend that is causing you to do things that you're not supposed to be doing. So Kevin is at, one of his meetings, and he's opening up about his mom coming to visit. And he sees Charity's willingness to host his mother as a step in the right direction. And then the group leader, he hands all the participants these little bottles of it's IPECAC syrup, which is a drug that's generally used to induce vomiting. But for the purpose of the group, he wants them to take a dose every time they begin to have these unwanted feelings or desires. So Kevin's mom arrives at the Greenleaf estate and is so happy to see her grandson. And when the two are alone, she asks Kevin why it took so long for her to be able to visit. And she believes that Charity was suffering from postpartum depression. And so she tells Kevin that she needs to go to the grocery store, but he lets her know that Marisol has gotten everything that she needs and is in the kitchen. So, it's evident that the mom is not impressed with the Greenleafs and everything that they've exposed her son to, and she feels that Kevin has changed since he married Charity. So later, Kevin's mom is alone with Charity, and it is like a very awkward moment, but she tells Charity, with all the help that she has around that mansion they living in, that motherhood should come really easy for her, and she shouldn't have to be worried about anything. So Grace has lunch with Darius Nash. Those two are like really getting cozy and chummy with each other. And they order some crab legs from a food truck. But it's obvious that Grace knows nothing about eating crabs, because she had like a mallet and she was like beating the hell out of them crabs. And so she shares with Darius that Danielle attempted suicide after being bullied. and describes her angst knowing that Uncle Mac is still free and that nothing is probably going to happen to him. So Darius tells her that when she gets down and distraught that Uncle Mac actually wins, so she needs to refunnel her energy. He then offers to take her to work off some steam, but the two end up at a batting cage where he teaches Grace how to hit. So these two, like I say, are becoming very comfortable with each other, and Grace reveals that she feels like she has all the weight of the family's issues on her shoulders, and that she's the one that's responsible for cleaning up the family's mess. And I'm thinking to myself, you picked up that weight and put that weight on your shoulders. Like, nobody was asking you for any help. And I guess she's feeling like that she stirred the hornet's nest and it didn't turn out the way that she wants to. So now she's all stressed out where everybody else has moved on with their lives. So Lady Mae, the bishop, Darlene, and Corinne are listening to the interview that the bishop did at the local radio station. And so Lady Mae is upset when she learns that the bishop's interview was only a snippet of what they talked about. And then the radio host tells the audience that if they want to hear the full interview, that they need to go to the website, because it appears that the Greenleafs were bumped off the air because of Basie Skanks. I guess he has like a radio show, and so they sold him the rest of the time slot. But I thought it was so interesting that when the bishop was on there, he was talking about all these events that's going on at the church, and that's just like so typical of these churches nowadays. Like, it's no longer about just getting the word of God and praise and worship. It's like you got to have, the hair weaving ministry, you got the, sundress ministry. I can't remember all the names that he was saying, but it was just like 5 or 6 ministries going on during the week. And I'm like, when do people get to go home and spend time with their families if you're constantly having all these activities at the church? As Lady Mae and Bishop are in her office, planning for a counterattack and how they're going to get the bishop back on the air for a full hour, and Lady Mae doesn't care how much it costs, Corinne comes in to let them know that Miss Claire called to say hello and let them know that Jacob had came by to visit. So the bishop looks over at Lady Mae and asks her if she's ready to paint that suite yet. So she is done with Jacob at this point. Lady Mae goes over to visit Jacob at the construction site to confront him about going to see Miss Claire, as she lets Jacob know that Basie Skanks is Daryl James' son, and that the only reason he hired him was to get back at the bishop. But Jacob lets her know that he's 40 years old and he has nothing to show for his life but his kids, and that even if Basie hired him, to get back at the dad, it's an opportunity that's been presented to him, and that he wants to make the best of the opportunity. And so Lady Mae says that she is embarrassed that he would rather stay at Triumph than come and try and work things out with their dad. And so she lets him know that he and Grace have both disappointed her. And I'm thinking, damn, Jacob, if you down on the bottom of the pond with Grace, you have really disappointed your mom. But Jacob responds and says that, he was afraid that she wasn't going to mention Grace in her little tirade. So he's kind of like putting on his big boy pants and no longer letting his mom run his life. So that night, Grace lectures Sophia, about covering for Zora, and she then orders her to get ready for dinner after Sophia says that she doesn't want to go down and eat whatever it was that she was smelling. She said the food smelled like cafeteria food. And so I'm noticing that Sophia is starting to become very flippant, and I think I mentioned it in the last episode that she's a little disrespectful girl. So her and Grace are going to be bumping heads a lot, it looks like. So at the dinner table, Kevin's mom sets it off. They're sitting there waiting on this dish. I think she called it bouillet or something like that, but evidently the way everybody was acting, it smelled horrible. And when they actually brought it out to the table, it looked kind of nasty. But anyway, she lets the bishop know that she had been trying to visit for some time, but Kevin wouldn't give her a date. And all she wanted was a date, so that she could go to the bank and let the bank know that she needed this time off. But they were acting like the date that the babies were to be born was a big secret. And she says that she felt unwanted and that Kevin was ashamed of her. So Lady Mae and the bishop, they try to calm her spirit, and then Kevin ends up walking out. And so the mother excuses herself to go see what's wrong with her baby boy. And Lady Mae turns to Charity, who has been quiet the entire time, and accuses her of acting as if nothing is amiss. So then Charity gets upset and she storms off as well. So upstairs, Kevin confesses to his mom that he had been staying at a hotel and just moved back in recently, and that the two and then all of a sudden the two have like this unspoken conversation, and the mother, comes to the conclusion that Kevin has come to terms with being gay. So I guess she knew he was gay all along, but was, I don't know, waiting on him to come out the closet. I don't know, but she seems to love him and be okay with whatever he wants to do. The following day, Kevin's mom leaves, and she seems to be in a better place. And as she's getting in the car, like he didn't even drive her to the airport or the bus station. I think she said she was trying to buy a bus ticket to come down there. So anyway, Kevin put her in the car and was telling her goodbye. And then she kept saying, that he was her only son, her only son. And then the scene goes to Lady Mae, and she has picked out a new color for Jacob's suite. And the painters are in there and they're painting the room. And so I guess I get the, a mother's son was the topic of the episode. And so, the whole Kevin and Jacob, and how they have disappointed their mothers. So Grace lets Danielle's mother know that they found a school, and although she can't promise the kids will be nicer, she is there if they need her for anything. And so later she overhears Darlene on the phone with her daughter, because remember her daughter was molested by Uncle Mike as well, and she is trying to calm her down after the daughter ran into Uncle Mike earlier in the day. So the show ends with Grace going to Uncle Mike's apartment building and sitting in the parking lot stalking until he came home. And then once he went upstairs, she takes the bat and busts out all the windows in his SUV. And Uncle Mike comes down, and the two of them like have this intense stare off. And then I think Grace hit the car one more time. But he was looking at her like, okay, heifer, you done drew a line in the sand and I'm coming for you. And I'm just sitting there like, Grace try to act like she is so holier than thou and she wants to hold everybody else accountable for what they're doing, but she never looks at what she's doing. And I'm thinking like, what preacher is out smashing the windows out somebody's car like she been listening to Jasmine Sullivan's song or something like that? Like, girl, catch your life and get some Jesus. Well, that's it for me, you guys. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel. And you can do all of that below. And I will get with you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.